Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. I'm David Glassner. I'm the superintendent of the Shaker Heights City School District. It is fantastic to see everyone here. The reason we are gathered here this evening is as part of our Superintendent Series. Superintendent Series is a series of community engagement and education opportunities to learn about different things that either we do in the school district or that we think will be issues that our community is interested in learning more about and having input in. Tonight we'll be focused on IB implementation and how the International Baccalaureate program comes alive in our school district. Very excited to share that with you. Just a couple of kind of housekeeping notes. First of all, you can see I'm using a microphone. I'm using a microphone because we are recording this session, and that's so that we can share this video afterwards. For people who weren't able to be here in person, we know that the information we'll be talking about is of interest to lots of people around our community. Secondly, I'll put a plug in for the last superintendent series of this year, which will be in April. We'll be focusing on detracking. Another way of thinking about that is our efforts to create inclusive, heterogeneous, and challenging learning environments for all of our students. And we'll be talking about that in April, so I encourage you to either come or tune in for that one as well. We're thrilled to have our facilitators this evening, Dr. John Moore, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and Addie Toby, who is our District IB Coordinator. Both have a lot of experience in education in Shaker and with the International Baccalaureate program, so I know we'll learn a lot this evening. Thanks again for being here, and I'll turn it over to Addie.
You want this, John, for later? Sure. All right. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I always love to talk about IB. Dr. Moore and I always joke that we could talk for hours and hours about the value of IB, but we promise tonight 2 hours? 2, 3. You'll be out of here. It'll be something like that, right? So I started in the district in 1997. This is my 29th year, so I was here before we had IB, before we had teaming at the middle school. I was here as we grew into a teaming middle school. I taught language and literature for 21 years until I transitioned to a spot of working as the MYP coordinator at the middle school in Woodbury. And then a few years after that, I was just the MYP coordinator at the middle school, and now I help as the IB district coordinator as well. So I've had an opportunity to be a big part of the district, and there is no place I'd rather be here than in Shaker Heights City School District. It's an amazing place, and I feel really lucky to have that opportunity. One of the first things we're going to have you do is you're going to write a little note. Take a look. You have a little card here. It's going to act like a little note card. And we've been doing this the last few weeks at different meetings. And we want you to think about the learner profile. But the learner profile is a foundation for what we think is a portrait of a graduate. There are key things that we want students to walk away with. And what they want to walk away with: being knowledgeable, being caring, being balanced, being a risk taker. And what you'll find is on this note card is we'd like you to write a note to somebody you care about, a friend, a family member, a neighbor, a colleague, and share something specifically about, hey, I want you to know that I think you're really, and I'll give you my example that I wrote today before I came. I wrote one to my son. He's 23 years old, and I wrote about him being a risk taker because he just interviewed for a second part of his job, and he was really nervous. He doesn't like to present. He's very science and mathematically rounded. Communication is not always his best thing at times. And so I wrote that note to him today. So if you take a moment, we'd like you to write a note to somebody that's important to you about being balanced, knowledgeable, a risk taker. So just take a minute to do that. So there's a couple of things here that you'll notice is that instead of just reading it off of the guide in front of you, that we wanted you to interact with it a little bit, that you could think of someone who comes to mind for you, a community member, a colleague, a neighbor, a family member, so that you can interact and think about, what does this learner profile mean? So instead of just getting that definition, you're kind of now applying it to someone important in your life. This is the language we're using in the sense of that portrait of a graduate from pre-K to 12, so that your student or your neighbor or someone in the community can build off of this. So 3 things we want to do today is talk to you a little bit about the foundations of the International Baccalaureate, experience a quick mini lesson that we will take you through, and kind of discuss and reflect what we have kind of discussed and looked at today. When you think about the International Baccalaureate, these are all the schools that exist all around. So when you look at Australia over here, you can see in this region there's 138, 6 in this part of Australia, 3 over here. So you can see us over here. There are quite a few within the United States, but they're all over the world. You can notice, sadly, there's an area that there isn't. Anyone see where it is? Russia, yeah. So recently, was it just last year, John? Yeah. Russia shut down all of their international baccalaureate schools, and they're no longer running them.
Why is that?
I would say the best thing I could tell you is because it questions that you're seeking that knowledge that they don't really want you to possibly seek. That's what comes to my mind.
And that was the stated response, was that it was encouraging students to consider other perspectives, particularly around the Ukrainian war, and that was becoming problematic in some of their schools.
This is one of my favorite little graphics, because I think it just tells us, it gives us a foundation. It's a little bit philosophical, but I think what it does is it shows we have these 3 programs: the primary years program, the middle years program, the diploma. And these are all the things, these 6 areas, from the philosophy to the learning and the teaching and the concepts. And these are where all the foundation is for all 3 programs. So I think it's nice to have. I don't want to go, heavy on it or get really deep, but I think these are the things that you'll see. And tonight we're going to focus quite a bit on here, thinking about the teaching, like what a mini lesson will look like.
So the IB has its own mission statement, but as a district, we've committed and aligned our principles and practices with what you see here. Again, as Addie noted, IB is an inquiry-based program. So instead of reading the mission to you and telling you how I see it or how you should see it, we're going to invite you to do some reflection here. Take a moment, if you will. I'll ask that you read this, and here's my question prompt for you. Just have a quick discussion at your table. This is the program our schools have committed to. However, we know in Shaker, a community is known by the schools that it keeps. Where in here do you see the Shaker community? Not necessarily the schools themselves, but where do you see connections with the Shaker community? Please give it a read and have a brief conversation. What connections with the community can you find? Let's do a quick check-in from each table. Just one interesting idea maybe that you heard or shared at your table. And maybe this table, if you don't mind, you could start. What's something you either heard or shared that you see connecting the community with this mission statement? And I'm going to give you this, if you don't mind.
Certainly. Hi, Jeffrey Gleason. My seat partner here, Felicia, she shared about how caring we are in our community. We are seeking a lot of knowledge and helping our students understand the world at large through a caring lens.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that response. How about this table? Who might share with us tonight?
I think one of the things a couple of us, came, settled in Shaker, knowing that there was an IB program, wanted to raise our families in the system because we liked the broader mission that IB has. So I think some of us are fans already. So
we'll give you the money later. All right, thanks for being here. All right. And how about this table? Who might like to share? like to share? Thank you.
I think we ended on kind of a counterbalance to what you said, that Lisa and I grew up in Shaker, and it was a natural fit. I mean, I'm looking at this mission, and it's identical to what we had when we were in school. With a little, not actually identical, but for the most part, it totally makes sense. I could see it not being hard to adopt it and have it become part of our community.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I want to connect with that, I think, very important idea. As I look at this mission, I think it's very clear how well connected it is with that Shaker community, a long-standing Shaker community. When I think about the power of the framework itself and what I've seen the real value of adopting it as a program has allowed us to do, is to systematize that experience, so that you're not having those amazing Shaker experiences by chance or even by choice, but it's baked into design so that every child, every grade, every class, every building has that shared Shaker experience that I think you two might be very nostalgic about. This is our quality assurance to ensure each child gets to have those experiences. And in fact, here's some examples of those experiences in action. We're just going to make a couple of connections here to share. This is from one of our elementary programs. They've been working with a new English language arts curricula. And I just want to articulate, curricula, when you buy them off the shelf, they're materials, and that's really all they are. We visited Ludlow pre-K today, for example. And when we went to build or reinitiate that program, we looked at all these different curricula, and we compared them side by side. And today, this true-to-life example came up. The range of curricular material goes from, this was one unit we evaluated, we did not adopt, balls, it was a unit about balls and different size balls and rolling balls and things, to the program that we actually purchased to incorporate into our International Baccalaureate Framework for Learning, which they're starting to learn about forces and motion, part of the IB unit, how the world works. So when you think about curricula and the expanse of curricula, the range, folks, is from a study on balls to forces in motion to explore and inquire into how the world works. I bring up that example to say, here's an example where the young people were studying nonfiction and fiction texts about the ocean, but it didn't stop there. The students were inspired and created a whole class mural using some recycled materials, and it evolved in this piece about pollution and the importance of recycling and cleaning up the oceans. Didn't stop there. They went on to write, each of them, nonfiction texts about this. The art teacher became involved, made connections with the curriculum. Those are whale sharks you see there. So when you're an IB student, you are getting, sure, some of this curricular standards-based materials, but you'll notice it's elevated in such a significant way. And particularly when young people come home and they say, oh, this is what we learned about, it's very rarely, unfortunately, the academic content standards. It is most often going to be these more innovative, integrated experiences that students are excited to come home and talk about. A few other examples of that. Here we have our 8th grade students. They worked on community project. This young pair here was investigating domestic violence, and they were making presentations to different members of the community. This was their passion project that they wanted to inquire and take action on. Speaking of action, here you have some young people with volunteers in a partnership with the Shaker Nature Center are harvesting native plant seeds. They packaged them up. They put some in their garden on Onaway campus, and they took others to the Nature Center. That community partnership is critical. It's a standard of the IB program. Here, our last photo, you see some of our high schoolers. They went and connected with a recent alumni who's featured in the Cleveland Museum of Art. He has a digital showcase of a video game that began as his 10th grade personal project. He initiated this excitement, this inquiry into coding and what might it be like to create your video game, and now about 5-6 years later, he's being featured in museums. We didn't take the kids there just to celebrate him. It's to see what they could do. It's a manifestation of their dreams that we hope to start right here in Shaker schools. This is the kind of experience we want for all of our children. Now, I said this doesn't happen by chance, it happens by design, and the vehicle for that design are what we call units of inquiry. Teachers like us will sit together and we collaborate to elevate that state or maybe model curricula into those memorable experiences that we want each of our children to have. So Addie has prepared such an experience for us.
So this is a particular lesson that we have done before at the middle school. So it comes right from, fresh from the 7th grade team that worked on it. And we did pick it in particularly. It's one that they open with that talks about communities. And the big idea here is communities share their identity and culture through art, stories. Different perspectives can lead people to interpret them in different ways. We're going to take about 4 weeks to 5 weeks of work and squish it into 10 minutes. But that way you can get a little idea of what we have here, and we would be happy to share more about it at the end. I added the academic content standards because there always is this, based in something beyond this idea? Of course it is. The state of Ohio has standards that we are held to and want to provide to our students. And so I just kind of added them to give you an idea that citing textual evidence, determining a theme, how does the author develop, the views of the different characters. So these are all based in that, in this bigger idea. So in front of you, you're going to see that you have two things. One of you is going to take a story. One of you is going to take a picture. And then for the groups of 4, you can do 2 pictures, 2 stories. So what you have here, this is a story that's by Tony Cade Bambera. It's called War of the Wall, a short story that the students would have read. We only gave you an excerpt from the time, so we took one little piece of it. And then the second thing you have is an art piece that's called Heritage by Wadsworth Gerald. And this is actually at the Cleveland Museum of Art. One of the amazing things, we have this amazing art museum right in our backyard. Our students are there often throughout elementary, middle, and high school. So this particular piece is taken because it's local. All right, so you have this. I want you to take a moment and you're going to look at your piece of art or read your little excerpt, and then think about these questions. You're only going to focus if you got the artwork on these and the excerpt on these for at first. So take a few minutes to do that, and then we're going to have you start to talk about it at your table. So take a few minutes, look at your art piece to answer those questions, and look at the excerpts. So now you've had a few moments to think on your own. So that's very common. You want a little bit of think time individually for your students. And then it's the collaborative time where you can start to share about your excerpt, about your piece of art, and start to have just a general discussion. Pick one of the questions, share, pick one of the questions, share. We're going to get to even a bigger picture, but I want you to start to notice how we want to approach that bigger idea of community and perspective by using literature and using art. And there's a bigger connection we're going to keep building up to, that it's not by accident that we're choosing this at a middle level and where we might be headed to the high school. So go ahead and just start to talk at your tables and share. So I'm going to bring you back in for a few moments. if you don't mind, I appreciate it. What you thought, if you had the piece of artwork or you had the literature, and what question you might have answered, or what kind of resonated with you. And then we'll kind of, after that, talk about this bigger opportunity of what this means in a classroom for our community of students. So anyone want to start about if you talked about the art piece in particular, we'll start with Heritage that's at the Cleveland Museum of Art. Any of the questions or things that stood out to you when you started looking at that and thinking about a language and literature class? Thank you.
I think we both noticed how vibrant and exciting it is. There's a lot of life in that particular image as you look at the color, the implied movement, and then the words, funk, rhythm, Africa. It's just really, well, I'm a child of that time, so I just love it, right?
Great.
So from a music standpoint, that's, I think, kind of what we were seeing. But then you talked about ownership.
Yes.
We're onto something else, maybe.
So I had the literature piece and saw the same passion in the children that were in the piece and how passionate they were about what they perceive as their wall and their space and their traditions and customs as a part of that. And then connected that with some of the arguments that we're seeing around public lands and what spaces belong to who and who owns land and who has ownership over land. So I was just interested to see where the kids really go with this, with these two pieces too.
Others about the art piece, or you can the excerpt, things that you want to add, kind of resonate with you, or what you want to see in a classroom that your community has.
We were just getting started. There's a lot to unpack here. Our conversation kind of delved into the way that other people who are different than them, and that's happening here. Like there's this person who's different who's trying to take over or impose their ideas here. But the fact that they're that they're different from us is something that is very central to what challenges there are, or what concerns maybe the kids have. In terms of thinking about students in middle school having this conversation where they're starting to think about their own identities, I could see how they might start making some connections between what they consider their own identities, what they consider their spaces, and making those connections.
And David, do you see that as mission aligned or aligned with the community values, what our prior conversation might be?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so relevant. We also talked about the spaces in our community, and the neighborhoods in our community, and how relevant this is, or reflective of things that have happened in our community historically and things that continue to play out.
Yeah, and if you live in the Lomond neighborhood, you might be thinking of a certain wall in the Lomond right between. But that's by design as well. And sometimes when we do these community events, it can feel like, hey, just give us the answer. Just tell us, what is it? What do we need to know? Why couldn't we do that here? Why couldn't we just say, this is IB, have a good rest of your night? Why is it important for us, if we're adhering to IB principles, that there has to be this experiential piece or component to this?
Well, if I'm looking at this IB learner profile, then if you did that, you wouldn't be helping us to develop our skills as inquirers and thinkers, and people who can reflect and listen to one another and be open-minded as we're trying to wrestle with whatever it is we're learning.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Lisa. It would be the same as saying, do as I say, not as I do. So we really try hard to construct these kinds of experiences so that people know what our classrooms look like, sound like, feel like. Addie, where's this going next? Where does this go?
So where you would head a little bit next, and you can imagine, this is something you can do. It's not just one class period. This is a 2-class period, 3-class, you're growing it from there, and you're inserting other things There's several other short stories and experiences that students can have. And in fact, I just want you to know this heritage piece is the one that's going to be used actually next year. We've used some murals and such in the past, but we modeled this after something John's going to share a little bit more about, our new opportunity for 11th grade Lang and Lit for All that happens next year that he's going to discuss. So we started thinking about how can we change it from just the wall, a mural, to having it scaffold up to what you should be headed towards in 11th grade, that this is very attainable for a middle school student. So this particular art piece is one we're going to use next year because we've used a different War of the Wall, that whole mural concept in the past. And then students love we'll still do stuff with murals, but you're going to see some different opportunities. So after you've taken a look at this, ultimately our goal would be to have these discussion prompts and that we'd be able to write an essay, a paragraph, depending on what you need for the day. And the biggest part of that, when you take a look, is there would be choice. We like that idea of you're not just, you have to do number one and best of luck, or you have to do number three, best of luck. But having an opportunity to pick, how am I going to address what we talked about? I've had time now to think on my own. I had time to collaborate and think with my peers around me. We've been doing it for several days or several weeks, depending on where you are in it, the opportunity. And now, which one best works for me from what we talked about? When you look at these prompts, what stands out to you? What interests you in our classrooms?
I don't know if it's what you were looking for, but or if it's even intentional, but I noticed almost that there's some scaffolding, some differentiation there, where the first bullet might be more approachable, and then it gets a little more advanced as you go.
Right, picking out that we can reach our students at a variety of levels,
Yeah.
Encouraging them. You might brainstorm two of them in your class.
Right.
Hey, play around with two now. Which one you're going to take? Or you can, like you said, guide someone if they need it a little bit, or you have the opportunity to build and grow it.
It's this idea that whatever your experience was, you've got something to connect with and to respond to. Absolutely. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Yes, sir.
These are kind of universal questions. I mean, I know the first question specifies
Right.
heritage and War of the Wall, but these questions could apply to almost any piece or form of expression. Yeah.
Appreciate that, David. And that's very by design, because we're really emphasizing skill development, not instead of knowledge, but through the application of knowledge. We're developing these communication, collaboration, writing, analysis types of skills. Yeah. So this is leading somewhere. We did some investigation, and what we noticed was that some of these schools across the country, they're adopting what they call IB Diploma Program for All. And we don't have enough time today to go into details of the diploma program, but if you go on to shaker.org, you pay attention, we had a recent IB presentation. You can hear a lot more about each of our programs. But for tonight, here's what we might share. In the 11th and 12th grade, students have the option to join one of our diploma program courses, or they might take 6 and do the entire diploma program. But what was happening in these other schools is they were noticing that the kinds of expectations for these IB diploma program courses, they're just really good expectations for kids. There is this misconception about the diploma program that it's only for certain kinds of kids, or only for these, elite kids. They're going to go to Oxford, they're going to go to Harvard. What we're noticing is that in Shaker Heights, we want to be preparing all students to be successful in courses like this. And an important first step in that journey was to really dive into the assessments and determine the extent to which we could backwards map those to the kinds of experiences that you had here tonight. If our student's going to be successful in 12th grade in such an IB DP course, what do we need to be doing in 7th so that they're ready? So imagine, if you will, you spent 13 years in the Shaker Heights City Schools. That's 13 Lang and Lit classes, and you read lots of books and you've had great discussions, and then you sit for an exam senior year and it says you have an hour and 45 minutes. Right. And you're given, as Addie noted before, a choice of prompts. Take a look at those prompts there. What connections to today's activities do you see here in these senior level exams? Yes, Lisa.
They're asking about comparing and contrasting or comparing two different works that have been studied, and also to think about themes and perspectives of the authors or the people who have created those as well.
And there's choice of prompt. Do you see choice somewhere?
Yes,
Where
and
else
choice.
do you see choice?
Where else do I see choice? Well, in which works they're focusing on.
Bingo. So we may have shared this similar Shaker experience, but these texts really resonated with me and those with someone else, but we can all use that knowledge to respond to these. It's that open assessment design that we're striving for, so that each child can connect and to a certain extent find themselves in their response. Now, before we unleash a 2-hour exam on a student, just say, just write, just go to town, we have got to, what we would call in the biz, scaffold that. We have to provide some instructional strategies so that students know how to break it down and write such a thorough, what they call guided analysis there. But coming next fall, all of our students are going to be engaging in this kind of more rigorous experience as a junior and then as a senior. We did some of this reflection, so for the sake of time, I think we'll go on to our next point, but because of the way that the units are formatted, teachers sit, again, as we are, and they think through all of this. How can we scaffold questions? How can we make this more culturally relevant? How can we help the young people develop these skills? Now, this experience was very grounded in communication, certainly, as well as thinking, but other types of experiences are going to introduce, practice, and master other aspects of what we call the approaches to learning skills. In other schools, you might hear them 21st century skills or something of that nature. These are the skills that we believe our students need for life. Now, I want to also acknowledge a question that we get a fair amount. In fact, I think there might have even been chatter recently on Facebook about this to say, okay, but couldn't we do this on our own? Maybe, but we weren't. Oftentimes, the kinds of experiences that you had, what is clear in the research, and I am loath to admit, but 20 years ago might have been true in Shaker, these kinds of learning experiences were reserved for what in Shaker we called enriched classes. In other schools, they might call them honors classes. They're the kinds of experiences that only certain kids get. And through this framework, our training, our investment of teacher leaders like Addie, again, our goal is to bring this kind of experience to each child in Shaker Heights so that it's not reserved only for the privileged, but no, these are the kinds of learning opportunities, skill building, knowledge acquisition that all children deserve and need to thrive. So what does that commitment look like to us financially? We do pay what you might call accreditation fees or organizational fees or membership dues, if you will. Those are the kinds of things that our school pay into to have a body of research, curriculum development, professional learning. These are the fees that we pay to keep the organization running. We also have IB-specific professional learning. And when you go to an IB training, that's about $350 a pop, more, of course, if we're going to send people out. I would have you know, though, our teachers engage in professional learning all the time, some of which is very IB-centric, all of which is IB-connected, but less explicit. This, I will say, is a very fair rate for professional learning for teachers. We also have amazing teacher leaders, as I noted, such as Addie, our IB coordinators. We have IB coordinators in Shaker. If you didn't have an IB program, most schools engage with something they might call an instructional coach, somebody whose job it is to facilitate, support teachers to continue that development of curriculum, learning opportunities, etc. And we noted about those IBDP assessments. You saw the questions, that example. When you go to sit for an IB exam, similar to an advanced placement exam, if you're experienced with that, there is a fee for that test. They develop the assessment, they score it, they report scores, and those scores get sent to a university. More recent law in Ohio, if you pass your IB exam, you have guaranteed college credit at any Ohio university, a public university, I should say. That does come at a cost. But I wouldn't want that barrier, or I wouldn't want that to serve as a barrier to any of our students who might be experiencing a financial challenge. Shaker does cover those costs, so that is from our general fund, and the state reimburses us to try to support more young people in having these kinds of experiences here.
All students are on the IB program, right? There's not a secondary.
PK-10, all students are. When you get to 11th, 12th grade, some students will take a class or two. Some students will opt for the entire program, which requires you to have 6 in the different subject areas. Some children will choose 0 of the DP specifically. That said, you might even seen David, Dr. Glasner, he even went and taught, I think, an AP World course maybe last week or so. Those methods that you're going to see in an AP class or a creative writing class or any other class that we offer in Shaker Heights, though, the same kind of methodology that we experience today is the expectation for those classes. And I mean, I think you exemplified that in an AP World class. Yeah.
Is there a reason not to continue to be part of the IB program for 11th and 12th grade for all students? I mean, that's their only option kind of thing?
Some schools opt to do that. Most do not. Why? And in particular, in a comprehensive high school like we have, students might want to really level up on enrichment or elective courses. We have young people who take theater, art, and band, for example. That makes it very difficult to engage in a complete program that requires 6 classes in each of the subjects, for example. So different strokes for different folks at that point. This Lang and Lit project, though, is to encourage, expect all students to at least take one to show that they can do it and they can be very successful. Yes?
So, all the students who now would be required to take the Lang and Lit class, would they all have to pay the $124?
That's a great question. We are seeking funding for that, and we have some pretty good sources. Some grant funders in our area are interested in supporting this project as an ongoing commitment to some work we did a few years ago in which we trained all teachers. They said, what we think you're doing is pretty amazing. When you're ready for this project to culminate, come back to us. And so we know at least for the foreseeable future, we've got some financial support. Mm-hmm. Okay. Here's how we're going to wrap.
Because I love this short story and you only got a little part of it. You can just Google away and the text is online, but there is a great ending to the story. So check it out. I didn't want to give it away. And I think you mentioned, somebody I might have said, like, there's more to this, and there is. It's a great ending. And you should see, like, students' faces, like, it takes a little bit as they figure out some things. They're like, wait. And it's a great moment. So it's a quick read. It's well worth your time.
And that is so Addie and our IB coordinators. Learning should be joyful. Thank you, Addie. Here's how we'd like to wrap tonight, and we're going to stick around. Q&A and anything we didn't address or that you'd like to know more about, we're here for you. But we would like a little feedback from you as well. And one of the strategies we use for that, we call it compass points, NESW. And here's what we mean by that. We would really appreciate it if on your desk you took a marker, you took a pen and a few Post-its, and you gave us some information. N, North, need to know. What do you still want to know? What do you need to know? You didn't get it all answered tonight, but you'd like some follow-up. What do you need to know? E, excited about. What connected with you? What resonated with you? What do you think we're doing right or you'd like to see more of? West, worrisome. I get it. I hear you. I've got some worries about this Lang and Lit project you're kicking off or whatever it might be. And finally, S, South, suggestions. I have some suggestions for you all to consider. So as Addie demonstrated before, this is a strategy we call think, pair, share. It's critical to scaffold. You have a few minutes to think. Jot us a few notes if you will. You'll have some time to pair, chat about your notes, go to one of the posters, pop it on there for us. And when you've done that, come say hi or ask a question, and we're here to support. All right? Thank you so much for being here, folks. All right, folks. If I can bring us back together for just one more minute, we're going to wrap up. I've got an eye on time there. We do want you to know you got a glimpse, you got a droplet. Our intention is that this is our way of being in Shaker Heights City Schools. The kinds of experience that you had, it's the way we see the world, and it's the way that we want students to learn. Our goal is that that kind of experience you had is just the way of life for our learners so that they can achieve that shared mission. So before you post it up or come and ask us, or maybe you got to go, anything you'd like to share to close out tonight, either posted or maybe something that didn't even make it there? Anything you'd like to share?
My appreciation. Thank you.
Okay. Would you please say that?
I'm going to extend my appreciation and thanks.
Did we get that? Okay, great. Thank you. We do appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
It's an exciting program. I think it adds to the value of what Shaker is about.
We appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you. We're tough. We can handle W's and S's as well. We're tough. We can make it. Anything you might want us to be thinking about as you leave tonight?
I have
Go ahead.
said I have a need to know. The IB, the Lang and Lit 11th, 12th, it's a 2-year program with the grades not showing up till summer. How do you anticipate that,
Great question. And we didn't talk much about grades here tonight, but we do have what you might call a dual grading system. Children in Shaker, they'll get that more traditional ABCD grade card from Shaker Heights City Schools. When you start in the middle years program, you also get rubric-based feedback. We can spend another 2 hours on assessment if you like. But it articulates and communicates how well the child is performing on a set of standards, sort of like at elementary, when you'd get feedback on the standards. By the time you get to the diploma program, there are specific assessments as part of the program that the children are evaluated on. We send it off to IB, and that's how they're going to get those scores and eventually college credit if they like. But your child will always get a Shaker grade just as they are today. Formatives, report card, and so on and so forth. Okay? Thank you for that good question. Okay. You know where we live. You have our emails. We would welcome you. Well, maybe you don't. Oh, no, there it is. Okay, good. You know where we are. Please call. Please contact. Don't let questions hang out there. If you've got it, we want to respond and stay connected. All right? Thank you all for being here.
Big thank you to John and Addie. We really hope that you take this opportunity to share what you learned this evening with your friends, family, neighbors, and others. And if you do have more questions now or in the future, please do not hesitate to reach out. I know I put a plug in at the beginning. I'll put another plug again. Our last superintendent series of the year will be on April 21st. We'll be focusing on creating inclusive and excellent classrooms. Encourage you to attend or to watch after the fact if you can't attend. And thank you for spending your evening with us today. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you all.